Well, good morning. Good morning. And we are looking at some interesting Mother Nature ramifications out there. Jack Heath, that was Rob Marciano, ABC News on a Monday morning. And as I said, J-Dog, we are looking at some pretty gusty winds on the coast and in the North Country. We're seeing a lot of rain and winds across our listening region. And we do have some power outages in the thousands reported this morning. Also, depending on what you're doing and where you're doing it, you might want to check any flights if you are headed somewhere because the some of the flights in different hubs have been delayed or postponed because of the storm, which pretty much came from the south up into the northeast, pounding us. So we'll keep you posted on any of the issues, the power outages, as well as the winds. And could be a flood watch in certain areas. Certainly some water piling up on the highways, so keep it down a little bit. You don't want a hydroplane out there on the interstate or on some of the busy roads. But again, as we get going on this Monday morning, we're looking at well, J-Dog, we're looking at an interesting day. Hey, listen, before we get back to some of the other stuff, Jack Heath, this is the Good Morning New Hampshire show, 9 to noon, the Pulse of an H, and, of course, WTSN, Seacoast in New Hampshire, right up into Kittery and York County and up into Kennebunk and Portland, Maine. WTSN 1270 AM, 98.1 FM. Got you covered in the Lakes region, by the way. There were some good gusts across the lake overnight and today, as the rain will continue, by the way, up until this evening. So kind of just a washout, a windy washout on this Monday, J-Dog. WEMJ, AM and FM, Laconia, and, of course, WASR, AM and FM, WTPL 107.7 FM on the Pulse. And, J-Dog, hope you had a good weekend out there. And this is kind of like fits your mood on Mondays out there. Windy, the trees are going back and forth, rain, some power outages. But other than that, a beautiful Monday, J-Dog. Yes, yeah, keep an eye. Hey, speaking of some of the turbulent weather, what about politics, huh? Things are getting downright interesting. Donald Trump's continuing to have a big poll lead in a lot of the early stuff and national stuff. But here in New Hampshire, could the polls be tightening with Nikki Haley gaining ground? We're going to hear from Governor Chris Sununu this morning on that. Latest poll here in New Hampshire does show some tightening, but is this Trump's primary to lose? We're also going to hear from one of the candidates who's running for governor this morning, Chuck Morse, Republican. He made some news over going into the weekend announcing he's going to endorse Donald Trump in the presidential primary here. Of course, Trump, a big player in the primary, maybe Morse hoping in his race against Kelly Ayotte that it could help bolster him, get some of the Trump base. We're not sure if Trump would end up endorsing Morse, but we're going to have more on all the above this morning as we get going. And Chuck Morse will be joining us also this morning. Donald Trump making an appearance at UNH over the weekend, supposedly some big crowds. And J-Doc, before we get our first newsmakers, some of the NFL games, I mean, the Bills crushed the Cowboys, right? I saw that. Yeah, and I was watching where I was with some people. Some people are actually getting their hopes up. The Patriots are actually going to beat the Chiefs in Foxborough yesterday. I'm not saying that they didn't have some chances, but you just knew that it was going to end up. I mean, too much talent on the Chiefs side. Yeah. 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 And by the way, the Lions, they lose one, they win one, they lose one, they win one. They're still in it. This is the Bengals getting by. Did you see that game over the Vikings? It was pretty good, tight. Oh, wow. There's no living with you. All right. We're going to go to our first newsmaker now. We also have some great giveaways this morning. Good morning, New Hampshire. The Pulse of an H, Jack Heath. Back. I want to thank our guest host who filled in last week for yours truly, Josh McKelvin, Alicia Pressens, Anthopoulos, and Dr. Vic. Getting us through last week, but it was a good recharge. And other than Mother Nature this morning, let's get back to something we know well in New Hampshire. That's politics. And, of course, We have the presidential primary coming up Tuesday, January 23rd. By the way, I guess we can announce this. We'll be broadcasting live from I guess they call it the new West Wing at St. Anselm College that morning and evening as the results come in. One of the folks paying attention to that, because now he's got a stake in the game, if you will, former Senate President, Republican gubernatorial hopeful Chuck Morse making some news going into the weekend, announcing he's going to get involved in the presidential primary, and he has endorsed former President Donald Trump. And some would say it's Trump's primary to lose here. And we bring in former Senate President and former U.S. Senate candidate, but now a candidate for governor, Chuck Morse. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of NH. Good morning, Senator. How you doing? You're not getting blown around out there, are you? Well, in your business, you sell some Christmas trees too. You gotta tie those down for the last minute shoppers. Well, let's start. What was your thinking behind the endorsement of Donald Trump in this presidential primary? You as a candidate running for governor on the Republican side. Mm-hmm. Now, I know there's no guarantee of anything, but beyond the presidential primary is right around the corner, January 23rd, Tuesday. But then you really go into the next big race here, since we don't have a U.S. Senate race. It's going to be probably that governor's race, and you're involved in that. Kelly Ayotte, one of the big Republican names, Sidney Warmington, Democrat executive counselor, Joyce Craig, big Democrat names running. So it's a pretty big race. So probably get the attention of the state as we go into the kind of the spring months or the end of the, into the summer before the election. Do you expect an endorsement back from Donald Trump in that gubernatorial primary? Well, let me just go back a little bit. If you play this out a little bit, we're going to have Governor Sununu on the show in the 10 o'clock hour. Of course, he's endorsed Nikki Haley. He had endorsed you in that your Senate primary race, and now you've endorsed Trump. And so after the primary, do you think there could be a little bit of Donald Trump wanting to stir things up? If presumably, do you expect Governor Sununu to endorse you or Kelly Ayotte? Let's go back. This primary coming up that Chuck Morse joining us, gubernatorial candidate, Republican, live. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H, endorsing Donald Trump in the primary. And that is, your friend, the Governor Sununu, last week or so made some big news last Tuesday. He's announced he's endorsing and supporting Nikki Haley. He'll be on the show in a little bit. So you're with Trump, Sununu's with Haley. I guess the question is, you look at Trump's big lead, Senator Morse, nationally in these polls here in New Hampshire. Do you think Governor Sununu, now you're behind Trump, so I'm asking you to kind of speak for Trump here. Can Nikki Haley in New Hampshire with independents and others crossing over, can she make it a race here? Is there any way she can catch Donald Trump, in your opinion? Let me ask you this one question. Donald Trump had a pretty good sized rally at UNH. Was it over the weekend? Did you go to that? Yeah. How would you? I don't know if you did it before, during, or how many folks roughly were at that event? I'm just curious because it's tough to tell with the media. It looked like it was pretty well attended. Wow. Yep. Let me ask you this one question because you've endorsed Donald Trump, so sometimes the rhetoric on the campaign trail, and I'm not sure what he said at UNH, but some of the news this morning. Here's one of the quotes: Donald Trump turning up the rhetoric on migrants, saying, "quote unquote," migrants are poisoning the blood of our country. Folks who come into the country illegally. We just heard stories out of Juarez, 1,000 people coming over into El Paso. Migrants are poisoning the blood of our country. What's your reaction to that statement by the former president? But do you think he goes too far in the rhetoric, or you're okay with that? What other issues, when you're out there running for governor, Senator Morse, before we let you go, are people talking about when you go to events? Are they worried about the economy? Is it border security? What other are their thoughts on Joe Biden and what's happening in Congress? What do you hear from people? Finally, I'm trying to figure out the difference between sometimes a Republican primary and a general election here in New Hampshire, and there's quite a difference, as you know. And when you look at your governor's race, namely against Kelly Ayotte, her fundraising numbers that were made some big news in the last few weeks, I think it was like $2.74 million you had raised or brought in or reported just under $1 million. That's a pretty big number for Kelly Ayotte, including against the Democrats. Do you think the Trump endorsement, if you got one, the Trump endorsement you just made, if you get Trump supporters or you were to get an endorsement from Trump, does that help you in the primary against Kelly Ayotte or not? How do you mean cover her Washington votes, folks? Or finally, do you think Kelly Ayotte, if Donald Trump wins the primary big here on January 23rd, Tuesday, some feel he will. Governor Sununu disagrees. But if Trump won it big, you think Kelly Ayotte in a Republican primary in your governor's race has an issue with some of the Trump supporters or not? All right, Senator Chuck Morse, Republican candidate for governor, talking about his endorsement of Donald Trump in the presidential primary, joining us. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an Age. Thank you, Senator. Be careful of the wind out there, if they say, as they say. And thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and we do have viewers because we're doing our YouTube channel live 9 to 10 each morning. We come back, we're going to have more political analysis. One of our own, Dr. Vikram Manchuramani, weighing in a little bit later on. Doug Tangden will give us some economic views. Governor Sununu in the top of the 10 o'clock hour talking about his endorsement of Nikki Haley. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Jack Heath on this Monday. Back in a moment. All right, we are back. Coming up in the 10 o'clock hour, Governor Chris Sununu will join us live. Join me live talking about his endorsement of Nikki Haley in the primary. We just had Chuck Morse on, really making some news. Dr. Vikram Ancharamani, of course, Dr. Vic, of a part of our broadcasting family, host of Navigating Uncertainty, the weekly podcast. Good morning, Dr. Vic. I'm okay. I'm okay. Hope you're not being blown around up on the mountain there. Hey, real quickly, we just had Chuck Morse on. Someone he's running as a Republican in the governor's races. Kelly Ayotte, the other big name on the Republican side. She had a whopping fundraising number, but Morse endorsing Trump ahead of that rally at UNH in the presidential primary and taking on. First time I heard him, the Senator Morse, really going after Kelly Ayotte in that interview I just had. I'm sure you heard it on the border, saying she was a liberal member of the U.S. Senate as a Republican and kind of even saying that she was supporting promoting amnesty for illegal immigrants. So kind of the first time I saw him take some swipes at Kelly Ayotte, something he probably has to do, I guess, if you look at the fundraising numbers, if that is indicative of anything. Yeah, I would think that's sort of it. Do you think well, let's talk about, New Hampshire. Governor Sununu is going to be on a little bit at 10 o'clock talking about his endorsement of Nikki Haley. Morris endorsing Trump. I'm not sure these endorsements, probably Sununu's obviously more significant, but can Nikki Haley make this a tight primary given these early Trump leads? What do you think of what do you think? I just asked Chuck Morris this. He said when he's out and about, the top issue he's hearing, Dr. Vic, is border security. Illegal migrants coming in. It was just a report this morning, almost 1,000 folks on that border between Juarez, Mexico, and El Paso, Texas. It's been a crisis in states like Arizona, Texas, and you know that. And of course, it's being felt in the Northeast. Donald Trump seems to be turning up the rhetoric, not seems to be, he's turning up the rhetoric on migrants, saying, quote unquote, they are poisoning the blood of our country. One of his quotes. I asked Chuck Morse if he felt that was over the top. He essentially said, no. What do you think? Yeah. Before I let you go, you're big on the socioeconomic side. We're going into that end of the year period. All right. Set the stage in a minute or two or less for 2024 U.S. domestic economy. Yeah. And the rates, I don't think the rates have done much to lower inflation, but that's my opinion. All right, Dr. Vic, make it a great Monday. Watch the wind and rain. Dr. Vic joining us. Thank you. Host and navigating uncertainty. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. Good Morning, New Hampshire, powered by GMI Asphalt and Paving. They're now paying up to $35 per hour for seasonal workers statewide. Call Christine or simply text PAVE, PAVE to 78,000. Now, speaking of great partners and sponsors, we're going to have a great partnership to talk about in the new year. Good Morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H, and Sig Sauer, great manufacturer, employer, and New Hampshire company. All right. And of course, Tenny Mountain, they're hoping to get back to the snowmaking. Their official ski area of Good Morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H, right in the center of New Hampshire, not far from Plymouth State University. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Jack Heath, J Dog on the boards, back in a few. All right, welcome back. Really, this is a pretty good system, huh? I guess it's going right through to the early evening. It's windy and rainy. This has caused havoc in a lot of areas, a lot of power outages, thousands without power. Had a buddy coming south to north through Franconia Notch this morning, and he sent me I don't know if he was driving, but it sent me a good video. He said the wind gusts through the notch were at least 75 miles per hour this morning. Coastal wind gusts are less than that, but they're pretty gusty. And a lot of rain. About 58 million people in the country this morning, mostly on the East Coast, dealing with flood watches. We have a flash flood type warning out there, some power outages. I don't know if you saw images of Charleston, South Carolina. My sister used to live there. Some friends of hers sent a picture of the downtown area, and the water was up to the kind of like halfway through about halfway up to the glass on the passenger side of the window. A lot of course, the low country, as they call it. There you go. By the way, if you have some flights, delays and cancellations at the start of the travel week today, some people flying out yesterday, I thought they might have some issues. A lot of flights postponed into today, maybe even tomorrow. It could be, but ironically, until Thursday before things, the wrinkles are out. Because, in our system, once we get a day or two of delays with some major hubs, and we have several on the East Coast, of course, dealing with this storm system today from Florida up. Of course, Florida over the weekend, very gusty. And this coming up here. But, places like Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, the whole eastern side of things right up into New England. So busy travel week. Other than that, I can't believe we are looking at Christmas Eve next Sunday. And then, of course, Christmas Monday. We have a normal busy week for you here this week on Good Morning New Hampshire, the Pulse of an Age. Coming up still this morning, Jack Heath, J-Doc on the boards, Governor Chris Sununu away on top of the next hour. And it's, really, I just got to go back to one of our newsmakers or two of our newsmakers this morning. Chuck Morse, Republican gubernatorial candidate, endorsing Donald Trump over the weekend for president in the primary here. Morse running for governor as Republican. Clearly, Morse's strategy or thinking is endorse Trump, get the Trump support or base of some of those supporters during the primary and make it more of a race with Kelly Ayotte, because some pundits and experts believe, if you look at those fundraising numbers, Kelly Ayotte had 2.74 million. That clearly she's the favorite to win the Republican primary in the governor's race, former U.S. Senator. But Chuck Morse may have something to say about that, and hoping that maybe getting that Trump support. No guarantee that Trump would support Morse in a gubernatorial primary. But let me play this one out for you. Let me try this one out for you for size. If Donald Trump, now Governor Sununu is coming on in a little bit, and Nikki Haley, in some polls would suggest that the New Hampshire presidential, the first in the nation presidential primary right after the Iowa caucus on Tuesday, January 23rd. And by the way, we're going to be broadcasting live from St. Anselm's Institute of Politics, the West Wing, that day and evening on Tuesday, January 23rd on primary day. But some would believe that Sununu can make this a race with Nikki Haley against Trump, because it seems that Chris Christie, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis aren't really getting into that, climbing in the numbers. So let's just presume that happens. Well, then after the primary, maybe it won't be, as important of what Donald Trump does. But if Donald Trump wins New Hampshire's presidential primary in January, if Trump wins, and based on that crowd this weekend at UNH, by the way, I was kind of surprised that UNH. No, I'm kidding. That they let the former president Donald Trump speak there. But you heard Chuck Morse saying about 4,000 or 5,000 people, according to former Senate President Morse, who was there over the weekend. He endorsed Trump. He's running for candidate, Morse, for Republican as a candidate for governor. But if Trump wins New Hampshire, if Trump wins New Hampshire big, I mean, like more than 12 or 15 points, double digits, presumably over Nikki Haley or whoever else is in second and third. If Trump wins big, like if there's no one really close, because the difference between like an NFL football game, if one team wins 41-6, it's not really that close. If Trump wins big, then Trump could go on and flex and use some of that political muscle after New Hampshire's primary and have some fun if he wanted in the governor's race, because what he could do there is if he's loyal back to Morse, and Trump, that doesn't always correlate. But if he ever endorsed Chuck Morse after winning the New Hampshire presidential primary, say, this winter or spring, and Morse can coalesce those Trump supporters in a Republican primary, it certainly would make things more interesting because Governor Sununu, sources are telling this show, is more likely to endorse this time around in the race for governor because he's moving on for two-year term. Governor Sununu, he would more likely, according to sources, endorse Kelly Ayotte in that Republican race, even though he endorsed Chuck Morse when Morse ran in the U.S. Senate primary, losing to Don Bolduc. So my point is, if Trump wanted to kind of have some fun back at Governor Sununu for endorsing Nikki Haley, trying to make it of a race or trip Trump in New Hampshire, Trump could endorse Morse. Sununu could endorse Nikki Haley, and you could have more of a flexing back and forth between the Sununu camps and the Trump camps right here in New Hampshire after New Hampshire's presidential primary. But again, that's down the road a bit. I think the bigger question that a lot of national media and local media are having is this, it's like two pictures forming. There's this belief because of independence in New Hampshire and because folks can participate if they, wanted to cross over in the Republican primary, if they, kind of registered that way, independents, even some Democrats. If a lot of independents vote and they're not being picked up in these national polls where it shows Trump with a big lead in states like New Hampshire, if Trump's lead is not that big, and if Sununu can ever make it a race with Nikki Haley and gets momentum and Nikki Haley sort of comes in really close or could clip Donald Trump in New Hampshire, I would actually tell you or say, I think Trump needs to win New Hampshire personally, because the stories have been consistently Trump has a big lead. I don't know about the Iowa caucus, but if Trump wins New Hampshire big, meaning at least kind of 12 to 15 points, I say that because these leads have been like 20, 30, 40 points. So I don't think the national media, Trump will call it a win no matter what. And in the NFL, a win's a win, even if you win by a field goal or a point or two. But in this game, the perception game, the perception game is so important. And if Nikki Haley were to be like 3 to 5, 6 points behind Trump, and it was a close race, they're going to say that this is a race. They're going to actually proclaim it, whether or not it is. They're going to claim it's now a race going out of New Hampshire between Trump and Haley. Places like South Carolina, where's Nikki Haley from, by the way? So my point is, there could become a race here. And there's not much time after the holidays. Is that 3-week window or whatever it is up until January 23rd. So here's the deal. Now, conversely, if Trump wins big out of New Hampshire, I think it has to be more than 10 or 12 or 15. If Trump wins by 18 points, the New Hampshire primary, I think he's on the way. He's going all the way to the nomination. That's my opinion. I don't think there's any stopping Trump. I think he becomes a Republican nominee. That's what I believe. For better or for worse, I'm not promoting that. I'm just telling you what I see. However, the only state that I think could be a precarious hiccup for Trump could be New Hampshire. And I think Chris Sununu knows that. I think that's why Governor Sununu jumped in endorsing Nikki Haley, who had some momentum in the polls and was seen to be becoming that second place person. Sununu, if he could trip up Trump, if Trump doesn't win New Hampshire or it's by a little, he has injured Trump going forward, and the story will be the comeback kid would be Nikki Haley, presumably. And now there could be a bigger surprise. I mean, Ramaswamy could do better here. DeSantis could do better in New Hampshire, Chris Christie. But I think the feeling is that Haley's on the move. So, Sununu could do that role that his father did with the late former President Bush Sr. Coming out of the Iowa caucus when former Governor John Sununu Sr. really took George Bush Sr. under his arm in the campaign and kind of took over and ran the New Hampshire campaign. And Bush won and went on to become president. So Sununu can play a big role here historically if he can catch and trip Trump. Conversely, if Trump wins and wins big, there's probably no looking back. Some commentary, 603-228-2080. Doug Tengen on deck. Also, one of the stories that aid or further aid to Ukraine and Israel on hold in terms of Congress because of concerns on border security spending. And notice how Trump is turning up the heat and the rhetoric on border security. Border security. You just heard Chuck Morris say that's the number one issue. People are worried about border security. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Back in a few. Well, some of the talks out of DC, and as we begin this week before Christmas, border deal, the border turning up to be a bigger issue, as you notice, even holding up potentially some more aid to Ukraine and Israel. So we'll keep you posted. Doug Tengden, worldwide market perspective with some economic thoughts, and a windy, gusty, rainy Monday. Good morning, Doug. Yeah, good winds going on up there. Yeah, it's a good one going through the day. What do you have? What are your thoughts? Yeah, I just get this feeling if you look at 2024, which is around the corner, hard to believe that not going to see a real crash when it comes to recession, but it seems that things are definitely slowing down. Do you concur? Is that going to be the feeling for much of the year? Interesting. What else? Interest rates, housing, borrowing money, mortgage. I mean, all that stuff. Take a shot at that. Well, again, I think some of the analysis I don't understand is people are still. I was talking to a couple recently that spent the weekend in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which many people do, and they said even in the off season, I'm not going to say what brand, whether it was Hilton or Hampton, but an overnight hotel room was, let's just say, closer to 500 or 600 bucks than it was 450. And you look at going out to dinner, and a lot of people are still spending and finding the money. Hmm. Yeah, all right. What else is catching your eye on this Monday morning? Yeah, I saw that. Hey, before I let you go, it wasn't on our talking points, but I want to ask you, Doug Tangden, worldwide market perspective. It seemed that the last, I'd say, more than a year, and J Dog may have to help me on some of the timetable, but when, what's his name, Friedman got charged in that crypto platform thing that Tom Brady and a lot of celebrities had invested in that kind of crashed, FTX, is it? Um, that sort of put a pall or a negative, even though that wasn't, those weren't crypto coins, that was a platform. But, crypto in the last few years was sort of starting to grow, especially among younger people. Some people had a Coinbase, so they had their wallet and they had they whatever they could, they would buy some crypto or Bitcoin. And then it kind of just in the last year or so seemed to lose its luster. And some of the platforms were feeling the pinch just recently. And I'm going to say in the last month or two. And I don't know if it's because of the economy slowing, but I just start to see now stories on mainstream media about Bitcoin is going up, and 2024 you're going to see more people return to the crypto markets or not. True or false? All right, Doug. Well, listen, I hope you get the power back, Doug Tengden. I appreciate it. He's in the Upper Valley. Thank you, Doug. And as I said, we really gusty overnight, and this morning some really strong wind gusts. And by the way, these are some of the basics, but let's be honest, sometimes we all have to be reminded of the basics, like the first snowfall. Remember a few weeks ago, J-Dog, we had a dusting, and the state police said they had like 80 accidents they responded to, and it was like a dusting. When I say a dusting, it was like a dusting. So sometimes on the driving side, we have to be reminded. So you'll see some puddling or ponding of the water with this much rain. Areas that are kind of where you see some puddles forming, they could get to be kind of like small ponds or rivers on some of the side roads. So be careful. You hit a patch of water. I don't care what kind of vehicle you're driving. The other thing is just the wind gust. And they've been pretty steady in the seacoast and the North Country and across our lakes region, across our listening region. So, two hands on the wheel. Don't get distracted, because you get a wind gust and your car pushes right or left. And I'm just going to be honest. I'm not going to sound like a candidate, the word. I'm not going to try and play an auto mechanic on my own show. We have great folks at sponsors like Auto Fair for that. But my point is, if your tires aren't really well balanced and when your car tends to pull left or right, for example, say your tires are out of rotation or whatever, and you get a wind gust and your hands are off the wheel, next thing you know, you could be up and against the guardrail. So it's just a messy, kind of sloppy day. And the other thing that's kind of interesting, J-Dog, is the temperatures are quite mild. I mean, we're well into the 50s today. In some places, it's going to feel closer to 60, despite the wind gusts and the rain. We still have a lot of power outages, and some flights have been delayed or postponed. So yeah. 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 And it's just that sort of that thaw week here. Christmas coming up, of course, Christmas Eve Sunday right into Monday. Some of the thoughts we'll also be sharing this morning. We expect to hear from Governor Chris Sununu, talking more about why he chose to endorse Nikki Haley, former South Carolina governor and ambassador to the UN, and her Republican presidential bid right here in New Hampshire in the primary coming up Tuesday, January 23rd. We'll be broadcasting live that day from the home of St. Anselm College, our good friends, the Institute of Politics in the West Wing. Join us Tuesday morning, our normal show, 9 to noon. And then, of course, that evening, as the results start to come in, our crew will be there live right in the West Wing at St. Anselm's on Tuesday, January 23rd. Also, a reminder, programming note, one of the top issues affecting people's health right here at home. More families in New England, I dare say the country, are impacted and affected by mental health, anxiety, depression, and addiction. Sometimes they go hand in hand, sometimes they do not. But we're going to do a special 3-hour town hall on it's a state of addiction and mental health right here at home on January 17th. That's a Thursday morning, January 17th at the Capitol Center for the Arts, Bank of New Hampshire stage. It's a beautiful facility right next to the Capitol Center. J-Dog, you know the area. We did our Veterans Town Hall there. 3 hours of state of addiction and mental health right here at home with great partners like Granite Recovery Centers and other folks in the mental health area, NAMI and the DEA, John Delaney. We're going to have a great important 3-hour show, live studio audience, by the way. And if you care about this subject, then it is the number one health issue affecting families: mental health, anxiety, depression, and unfortunately, not too often, addiction. Seating is available and free, but it is limited. So if you want to learn more, make a note, get there about 8:15, watch the show live 9 to noon Thursday, January 17th from the Capitol Center for the Arts, Bank of New Hampshire stage, our special 3-hour town hall, New Hampshire, the state of addiction and mental health right here at home. And very important show. We expect to hear from a lot of the major political stakeholders as well. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Back with Governor Sununu in a moment. Good morning, New Hampshire. The Pulse of an H. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards.